So as this video is being released, I will be returning back from a vacation that I took in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I have pre-recorded 2 videos and released them on the week. Number one being the one that we released on Thursday, which is the public speaking video in relation to Dale Carnegie's books. And today we're going to discuss self-persuasion, and the mind map title here is Self-Persuasion in relation to ... because you could fill in the blanks, but I'm going to discuss it from the perspective of self-persuasion in relation to others, or the concept of everyone is you pushed out when it comes to communication, persuasion, which from this perspective here is really about self-persuasion. I believe that if Neville Goddard was around, he would be a major contributor to the field of Neurolinguistic Programming. In 1970, Richard Bandler and John Grinder started this journey of putting together a body of work as a result of modeling those that have been effective in persuasion, communication, and transformation. From there, they brought forth the body of work known as Neurolinguistic Programming, in which I reference Robert Dilts many times in my videos. I refer to his model, I recommend his work, and I also recommend the work from another individual named Wyatt Woodsmall. These individuals have gone through a very extensive process of understanding the psychology of a person and how it translates over to transformation in others as far as persuasion and communication goes. One of the key concepts, favorite concepts in NLP for me, is the concept of frame, otherwise known as frame control. And this is what I believe Neville is a master of in relation to what he has shared with us, which we talk about from his perspective as concept of self, self-image, tied into the Maxwell Maltz work, psychocybernetics, the self-image. When we change our concept of self and we are self-persuaded that others are the way we believe them to be, we observe as people change to reflect those internal assumptions. Now, the goal is to practice this more so each day and realize it on the journey. For me, this was inspired from a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. Some of you might have read that book. That's a very popular book, especially for those that are interested in the concept that he talks about in there called lifestyle design. So I want to weave this into the synchronistic nature of how we bring forth success, the bridge of incidents, in relation to self-persuasion, by sharing with you a story that really was inspired by this book, The 4-Hour Workweek, in which in there he gives examples of how he was building a business, and at that time he was earning, I believe it was $60,000 a month from this business, but he was working long hours. Then he left, he went on a trip, and then he realized that the business was able to run itself while he was away. He shifted his perspective around. He took what we refer to as the quantum leap. He did something different. And some way, somehow, he freed up a lot of time and was able to do a lot of things that he really wanted to do, including, I believe, writing the book, as well as other activities, such as I think he got into tango dancing and became at one point tango dancing champion or something like that. But he started to live his life the way he really wanted to, and he got away from conventional thinking. And the self-persuasion at that time for me was, I could do that. After reading the book, I was inspired. I said, I am going to be able to do that one day. So I went on the journey into entrepreneurship, and I followed very much a rough guide as to what was articulated in that book. In 2011, I went on my first vacation, which I didn't do in a while since I had started my business in 2009. And I went with one of my friends, who I would consider a very synchronistic friend, because whenever I'm around him, I tend to have all these synchronistic experiences, such as, for example, he reached out to me one time in the earlier stages of building my business, and he asked me if I wanted to go camping with some of his friends. Man, I was deeply submerged in the process of building my business, but something inside of me said, go camping with him. So I did, and I ended up meeting some friends of his, who one of his close friends, I became very close with one of her friends, who I referenced in a number of videos ago. INFJs have been very influential to me. She was an INFJ, very intuitive. And we started to hang out, and I would go a lot to downtown Toronto, then decided to move to downtown Toronto. She influenced that decision because we would go and to different places downtown, and then I would find there was a lot more opportunity staying in downtown. One day I ended up in this lounge called the Cadillac Lounge. Some of you might know it. It's no longer there on Queen West. And I ran into one of my friends from high school who then connected me to a person that runs a restaurant slash nightclub slash bar, in which I came up with the idea to build my first point of sale system, which I took some software called Open Bravo and customized it and started selling it to restaurants and retail locations. And that was part of the connection of my synchronistic friend. But in relation to that, the synchronicity with him is we went to Mexico and I went on a 1-week vacation, and they have a bus at the resort that takes you over to Playa del Carmen, and they drop you off and they pick you up in the evening. So when I went down there, I fell in love with the city. I was walking around and I said to myself, I am going to come down here one time and I'm going to stay here for 1 month and I'm going to do this Tim Ferriss lifestyle design thing. And so I actually did it. 2012, I went January and stayed in Playa del Carmen. And during this time, this information of self-persuasion in relation to how we relate to others, as far as connecting and the synchronicity behind the connections, started to play out in the most harmonious way. Much of what we desire to see brought forth, if you watch my videos, probably has some connection when it comes to relationships, be it personal relationships, business relationships, family relationships, and so forth. Now, that stated, what we want to do is understand this concept of self-persuasion in relation to people, because then what happens is we make these changes within ourselves. And one of the best opportunities that I discuss to be able to do this is in public speaking. Thus, I recommend watching the video that I did, which was a video prior to this, in which we discussed Dale Carnegie's work. So what ended up happening when I went to Playa del Carmen for that 1 month, which all was part of this cool bridge of incidents of building this lifestyle that was once imagined, is I ended up connecting with a lot of people because I saw the value of connections. And everywhere I'd go, I would talk to people. And within a couple of weeks, I was getting invited to a lot of parties, private events. And there was even one day I remember there was about 3 or 4 parties I had to prioritize, go from one to the next, and ensure that I was not only getting my stuff done, which was actually a lot of things, because what I found was, like Tim Ferriss had experienced, a lot of those things seemed to solve themselves. Like the business was running seemingly by itself with the help of contractors, and there was less involvement on my part. And what I actually found was that was one of the more profitable months in my business while I was in Mexico, while most of the time was connecting with people, relating with people, having fun, enjoying life, and so forth. Those connections that I made, although they were personal connection, friendship connection, also translated over to business connections because I was getting introduced to those that were running the nightclubs. I was getting introduced to individuals running the resorts and private beach villas and so forth, and we're forming connections, which could have potentially led to business deals and some real estate stuff and so forth. But the bottom line is self-persuasion in relation to others. So what we want is to reflect on our journey day to day and say, how do we believe ourselves to be when it comes to others? Do we see others from a unity perspective, that some way, somehow, they play the theater in a joyous way because we enjoy the connections with people in relation to our vision? Or do we see them from a place of conflict? So Neville says this really well when he says, when you see someone in despair, can you represent him to yourself as he would like to be seen? And can you persuade yourself that what you see is real? To the degree that you are self-persuaded, he will become that man. Then you will have conquered by forgiveness. You will have taken him out of one state and placed him in another. This is what we do on the day-to-day journey to bringing forth success. We encounter people and we imagine them to be a certain way. And as we imagine them to be a certain way, a lot of times unconscious, that's why doing the subconscious work really helps to bring forth what we are unconsciously imagining them to be. They represent those images, the thought processes that we relate to with them in the theater of life. They play it out. And as we change how we relate to them, and we see it maybe from a more harmonious perspective, by understanding ourselves, by incorporating certain assumptions, which I talked about in the last Neville Goddard video last week, when we talked about NLP presuppositions, some ideal assumptions. As we begin to identify with those assumptions, we observe people change. There's a reason why in NLP we use those presuppositions, is because from the perspective of the facilitator, we are enabling change in them by enabling change in ourselves first. So we go through the transformation within ourselves, and no matter what they say that is doubt-based, fear-based, insecurity-based, low self-esteem-based in relation to how they want to be represented, we do not identify with what they are saying on the surface level, and we identify with what they truly want at a deeper level, which is the vision that they presented themselves to you when they agreed to do that deal with you. Now, keeping this in mind has allowed me to ascend past a lot of circumstances as far as connections with others, in which I would have once saw it from a very surface level, from a place of conflict. One of the things that I suggest to others, which I can understand can be very challenging, is when someone starts a business or they decide to take on an initiative in which they have something to offer, a product, a service, or something like that, even just to connect with people. I would say, who are the people that you already know that can benefit from them? Have that conversation with them and make the offer. That is an opportunity, because if a person feels inner resistance to that, then they have a disconnect between their value, who they are, and the other person. And they need to self-persuade themselves to realize that the person is ready to receive that value. That's why we do the affirmations and the inner talk to relate. And then I say, once you have connected with the people that you know that can benefit of the product or service or whatever it is that you have to offer, and make the offer, then move on to others who know people who also can benefit from that product or service. And again, this might conjure up in the individual stress, frustration. But the stress and frustration is based on the concept that they hold of themselves. It's not actually real. It's not concrete in reality. It is based on internal programming. When they use it as an opportunity to change the concept of self within, what they will notice is they will be able to do those things automatically, or they will synchronistically do something else. But regardless, some way, somehow, they will relate with everybody in a harmonious way, in a theatrical performance way, to bring forth the vision. Now, this is what I would consider the wisdom of the ages, to change within yourself and observe the outer world changes as a result of the changes within ourselves, which also ties in to what we've been discussing over the last few videos of the internal alchemical process, the internal transformation, the journey of the alchemist within, the evolution of mind, the spiritual transmutation that relates over, and I went through the transmutation process. I'll put a link in the description to a video in which I discuss it, which translates over to outer world changes. So, he states, does a strong persuasion that a thing is so make it so? And Isaiah replied, all prophets believe it does. And in ages of imagination, a firm persuasion moved mountains. But many today are not capable of a firm persuasion of anything. Everything here was once only a desire, believed. This building, the clothes you wear, or the car you drive were first a desire, then believed into being. Now, this is a radical shift of mind, and we don't need to adopt this radical shift of mind overnight, right away in this moment. We can adopt it a little bit more so each day to realize it. Now, why is it the case that many do not have this capability of a firm persuasion of themselves in relation to their vision, in relation to goals, desires, people, environment, circumstance, information? Why is it? It's because, for whatever the reason may be, we are assimilating certain interpretations. And we've been doing this all throughout our life that we would call limiting or disempowering. And those interpretations are forming this concept of self, the self-image. And this self-image is playing out the theater. So there comes a point in a person's life where they have to say to themselves, I am no longer going to allow these interpretations to go in. I'm going to be the conscious guardian of the gate of the subconscious, and then infuse the subconscious with what I imagine and believe to be true. As I observe then the changes, I can then confirm the changes, reaffirm the changes upon reflection, and continue this journey until my reality changes, radically so, to reflect my vision. He says, the Bible speaks of water. The mystic knows it means truth. And so when I see anyone in my mind's eye and see him free, I am giving him the only truth that will set him free. So if I water his plant, imagine the water is really going to it, and I see the leaves begin to appear, then that man is becoming free. He becomes healthy. He becomes secure. He becomes loved. Then those trees are growing beautifully in my garden. And so as I do that, not only will he benefit from my watering his plant, but I will benefit. I will begin to awaken. Now, this is a very important, clear distinction. As we assume, ideally, from a place of love and a place of ideal, and represent others the way that is ideal, we are actually representing ourselves in the way that is ideal. So we do this in the most practical sense by doing the inner changes, the inner conversations, and going through the experiences and seeing reality change and reaffirming those confirmation through acknowledgement of those changes, which then forms beliefs. And we also do it with ourselves as a result of doing that. That becomes a working both ways approach. As you look at others from a place of prosperity, you do unto yourself. That's why we tie this into the golden rule. Do unto others as you wish done unto yourself. And so he states, if you desire a change in your relationships at home or in business, you don't argue, you don't persuade them. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. So can I persuade myself that you are as I desire to see you? Then to the degree that I can persuade myself, you will conform in the outer world to that persuasion. So this is really going into the depths of the understanding that all subconscious minds are connected. This is unified. Some way, somehow, you think something, a person shows up and plays the role in relation to the vision. This is something that has always been happening. If you look back at your life, this has always been happening. The truth of the matter is we are becoming more aware and awake, as he says. He will benefit from my watering his plant, but I will benefit. I will begin to awake. So you will see these connections mathematically play out. And you can track it back to the thoughts, what you assume to be true. So that's what we want then, is to integrate this more so and practice this. This is why we've been discussing it over the videos. And as I had shared, one of the best ways to do it is through connecting with others, because others are the mirror, the direct mirror. So if I say to someone, go and connect with the people and make the offers, and they've got all this inner resistance surrounding it, I ask the question, what is the inner resistance? They start to reveal their fears, their insecurities, and aspects within themselves that is not really who they are, but they have been identifying with those aspects, and they can change those aspects within themselves using the subconscious mind work. And as a result of it, they change. Because you can consciously talk to someone about something, but until it gets into the subconscious, they will continue to play out that theater, because that part of us, subconscious, is that which we are not consciously aware of, but we're becoming more consciously aware of it each day. This is why someone who creates business success, for example, they're able to do it again and again and again consciously. They bring it forth via the unconscious. Some way, somehow they get there. And then they go and write a book, or they create a model, and they create a step-by-step process, and they follow it again, a business plan and so forth, down to the T. Now, while there's still improvisation and variation because they understand the nuances of flexibility, they generally tend to be able to explain, provided that they develop their communication skills, in a way that articulates the step-by-step process, both the abstract and granular aspects of the process to be able to guide themselves and their team over to the vision. We call them good leaders. What are they really representing in regards to what we are discussing here? They have become more awakened. They have more conscious awareness as to what is in their subconscious. So this is the beautiful aspect of Neville's philosophy. As he says, focus on the end, dwell in the end, change the inner conversations and the assumptions, and everything else takes care of itself. And then later on, yes, you can understand the cause and effect relationships and put together the process. This is how the alchemists were producing chemistry-based contribution, medicine-based contribution, philosophy-based contribution, because they would go through the changes within, they would prove the changes in equation in relation to whatever it is they're working on, and they would reverse engineer it and put together a process and share it with another person. And so he says, so you try it, and the mind will expand. See, he's saying it right here. So you try it, and the mind will expand. What is the expansion? It's the ability to see more potentiality, more possibility, more opportunity where others see obstacle. You'll notice this as you continue on this journey, as you continue to work with this information and produce, put it into action, and apply this information, is you will see more parallels and connections than maybe you saw before. And as a result, we can call this a mind expansion. You will find yourself not only increasing in this world, in the outer world, but you will find mystical revelations taking place within you, which is the purpose of the teaching. So this is very much tied into the alchemist philosophy. Let's read it again. Neville states, so you try it, and the mind will expand. You will find yourself not only increasing in this world, in the outer world, but you will find mystical revelations taking place within you, which is the purpose of the teaching. It is not just to bring about changes in the inner that man ascends on higher levels of consciousness. The purpose of the whole appearance is to awaken from the lowest descent on the ladder to the highest. So we value the journey, and we go through it step by step. One of my favorite quotes from James Allen in his book, Heavenly Life, is brick by brick, step by step, and I'm paraphrasing, brick by brick, pure thought upon pure thought. This is how we do it, one step at a time. And we value each part of the journey. And the journey is the realization of what is buried within the unconscious and brought forth into the conscious through how we interact. So we're looking at this from the perspective of in relation to others. And this is one of the most valuable things that we can do, is look in the mirror, which is the conversation and the relation with others, and understand what we are imagining that's playing out the theater that creates the interaction. And if we can understand what these things are and make those changes within ourselves, we are said from the NLP perspective to have powerful frame. And when this powerful frame exists, and you can observe this, I recommend doing it as an exercise. Observe people who seem to be at the cause of the reality, people reacting to them, responding to them. You will notice that there's something about them, that they seem to have this frame. And everywhere they go, people seem to want to connect with them, relate with them, be around them, and the world seems to harmonize to their thinking. And we want to really understand what's going on in their psychology. And personally, I've invested a lot of time with these highly persuasive, highly effective communicators. A lot of times they don't know how persuasive they are. And I studied their psychology, and I will absolutely track it back to the degree of self-persuasion that they have in themselves and how they believe others relate to them. So we have the ability then to practice. What is your vision? What is your goal? Some way, somehow, it may relate to others. Observe the thinking, the inner conversations, the inner dialogue that we have in relation to them, and change those inner conversations. And as they change, we will observe reality changing, our behaviors changing, how we relate to them. All those things that we would call outer world aspects change as a result of the inner dialogue, the inner conversation, the representation in yourself as they would like to be seen. And that is what we would call self-persuasion. So now let's conclude this with an affirmation to further instill this. We would say, I realize that everywhere I go, I'm able to observe how my inner dialogue and my self-image and how I relate to others plays out as theater. As a result, I'm able to reflect on what is revealed and encourage the changes within to externalize as the ideal relationships in regards to my vision. I'm finding joy and deep presence as I do this. Through the process of doing this, I realize more about my inner world. I continue down the inner path. And as I continue down this inner path, the outer path reveals what I have committed to in relation to my vision. I'm able to observe this more so through the cause and effect relationship, cause within and effect in the outer world connection, engagement, and interaction with the person. I understand how the inner dialogue and inner interpretations plays out as theater as I relate with others, and I make the changes within. As I make these changes within, I observe the changes. As I observe the changes, I confirm and reaffirm the changes. And I reflect back on further changes as I continue down this journey to bring forth what I desire in the spirit of harmony with all. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.